Good afternoon. My name is Faye Malarkey Black, and this afternoon it's my pleasure to introduce to you two speakers joining us from Orbis International, a nonprofit organization dedicated to fighting blindness in developing countries by performing sight-saving surgeries on board an airplane-based teaching hospital dubbed the Flying Eye Hospital. Since 1989, our first speaker, Jack McHale, has held various positions within the Orbis organization, including former service as president and CEO. This after 2 decades of involvement with the acquisition and operation of the Flying Eye Hospital aircraft, while he was an executive at FedEx. Before that, Jack served in various management and marketing positions at McDonnell Douglas. Jack now focuses on the design, development, and fundraising efforts related to the new Flying Eye Hospital, an MD-10 destined to be the 3rd-generation Flying Eye Hospital. Joining Jack today is Dr. Bradley Black, a pediatric ophthalmologist who, in addition to running his own practice in Baton Rouge, has been volunteering with Orbis since 1988. As part of the Orbis team, he has taught and performed pediatric eye surgery in over 30 countries. Brad holds a lengthy list of certification and honors and sits on a number of boards, including the Medical Advisory Board of Orbis's Telemedicine Cyber Site. Here at RAA, we often joke around that this industry is like a big extended family, but today one of our speakers actually is family. Dr. Black is my father-in-law. It was through him that I first learned about Orbis and the work that they do, and I really have enjoyed hearing about it. Later, I learned that long-term RAA associate member Flight Safety International has also played a key role in helping to develop and support this humanitarian effort through the critical involvement of Flight Safety's Al Yolke, who has been a key supporter of the cause through its transition from a brilliant idea to its execution. The more I learn about this organization, the more relationships I uncover between RAA and Orbis, and I felt it was time to bring RAA and Orbis together. So we are delighted to have our two speakers here with us today. Together they will discuss how the aircraft itself is as precious a tool as the medical instruments and equipment in helping to save sight worldwide. So please join me in welcoming our first speaker this afternoon, Mr. Jack McHale.
Oh. Jack has trouble getting out of the chair. Thank you, Faye. Well, it's our pleasure to be here after that stellar introduction. I have had this remarkable career. I spent 22 years at McDonnell Douglas in marketing and sales. I was fortunate enough to have a small fly-by-night carrier in Memphis be one of my customers. I sold FedEx 13 DC-1030 freighters and the first 2 MD-11s, and this guy named Fred Smith asked me if I'd like to come and join FedEx as a buyer. So I spent 22 years as a managing director of acquisitions at FedEx, and that's where I got associated with Orbis. One of my first assignments was to source a new Flying Eye Hospital platform. Orbis had been using a DC-8 donated by United for about 12 years. And so I was responsible for finding the current Flying Eye Hospital, Ship 2, the second DC-10 ever built, that's been in service almost 20 years for us. So the way we're going to do this today, this is a little different format for us. I usually stand up here for an hour and tell you all these heart-wrenching, passionate stories about my personal experiences, but we've been very lucky to have Omega Watch and Daniel Craig, James Bond, come on board as a spokesman. So I'm going to give a brief introduction and overview of Orbis, our history, what we're doing, and what we're doing especially with the new airplane. Then we have a short video with Daniel Craig, who can speak much more eloquently about what our mission is. And then I'm going to turn it over to Dr. Black, who can share some of his 24 years of experience as an Orbis volunteer faculty member. You'll hear some of these statistics over and over again because part of our mission is to make people aware that there is a blight, a global blight called blindness. 90% of it occurs outside the developed world where people don't have access to or can't afford care. There's just under 40 million blind people in the world, and the travesty is that having access to care 32 million. 80% could be cured today, and that's our mission. An adult goes blind in the world every 5 seconds. So the backlog is increasing. A child goes blind or is born blind every minute. 90% of these children that are blind never go to school. The additional travesty is that somebody who's blind in a third world country, not only can they not contribute to their economic family prosperity, but they take another member of the family to take care of them. So it's a 2-for-1, which obviously affects the GMP. So Orbis is celebrating its 30th year, started in 1982. Our mission statement is to cure and treat and prevent blindness globally by delivering first quality health care to areas of the world that just don't have access to it. And this is the classic teach a man to fish. We're not capacity driven or volume driven, we're skill transfer driven. We're capacity building and sustainability. To date, with the 2 platforms, the DC-8 and the DC-10, we've been in 89 countries. We have trained almost 300,000 medical professionals, performed almost 1 million surgeries, and it is estimated that our success begins after we leave, and that in our 30-year history, we have transformed 15 million lives. Now, how do we do it? We obviously operate the world's only flying eye hospital, a DC-10, as Faye mentioned. But it became very apparent early on with Orbis that just the airplane was not enough. We were very blessed to have this enormous outpouring of volunteers from the ophthalmological community. We have over 500 volunteers, one of the best of which is seated to my left. These people give up their own time. They have to continue to pay overhead and salaries, but they give up a week or 2 a year to join the Flying Eye Hospital or to go on a hospital-based program, which is essentially the same kind of training exercise, only without the airplane. So they'll go to the country with a team of 2 doctors, 2 nurses, a biomed technician, and an anesthesiologist, and teach people in these underdeveloped countries surgeries that are remedial here. We also have, and Dr. Black sits on the board, we have a tremendously underused at the moment, but extremely efficient cyber site model where we have e-mentoring, so medical personnel from around the world can go on the website and get mentored by our volunteer faculty. E-learning, we have a syllabus for various subspecialties. E-diagnostics, now with digital video and the web, we can actually have global consultants. Again, in terms of sustainability, we have partnership hospitals. We have fellowships, because it's not a one and done. You know, we want to come in with the airplane. The airplane obviously is the door opener, follow up with hospital-based programs, continue with fellowships, e-learning, and partnership hospitals. This is the history. I've mentioned some of this before. In the late 70s, a brilliant ophthalmologist, David Payton, said that recognized there was a need for training around the world, and it was difficult to get to these places and expensive commercially. So he suggested that we build a flying eye hospital. As Faye mentioned, Al Yulchi was president and founder of Flight Safety, contributed heavily to the first DC-8 that was donated by United Airlines. And Al put up the money to put the hospital in the airplane. First flight was 1982, flew till 1984. I got involved in 1989 with the acquisition of the current Flying Eye Hospital that went into service in 1994. So for the last 18 years or so, we've been flying DC-10 Ship 2. And the exciting thing for us is that we are now working on the next generation, which is an MD-10, and I'll get to why and some of the makeup. Our primary corporate sponsors are FedEx, Alcon, who's a major producer of surgical equipment and supplies, optical. Omega Watch, I just alluded to the Daniel Craig connection. You see the video. Pfizer, we also distribute this universal antibiotic called Zithromax, which attacks a water-based bacteria that turns your eyelid inside. It's predominant in Ethiopia. Pfizer gave us $60 million worth of Zithromax last year to distribute. After you take it for 2 years in a row, then you develop this resistance. But can you imagine if you have an eyelash in your eye, it drives you crazy. Imagine if your whole eyelid is inverted. It attacks children. L'Occitane is a French perfume and soap manufacturer. It was a recent sponsor. I just had their chairman in Vermont looking at the new modularized Flying Eye Hospital, and they gave us a check for $800,000 to have branding on the clinic in the new hospital. And United Airlines has been a supporter in terms of tickets, engines, and of course the original DC-8. I won't go through every dot and star, but this is where our presence is, and it's obviously in Latin America, Asia, and Africa. So here's a picture of our first DC-8. It flew 150 missions to 50 countries in its 12-year tenure, and it was retired in 1994 and is in the Air and Space Museum in Beijing since many of the missions were in China. This shows you the operating theater in the DC-8, and it was pretty cramped because we're a teaching hospital. It's not just the surgeon, the nurse, and his surgical team, but we want to get as many of the locals in for hands-on training. You actually had to leave the airplane. To go to recovery, you had to go out the front door, down the steps, across the tarmac, and up the back door. Here's the current Flying Eye Hospital. As I mentioned, it's the second airplane to roll off the line at McDonnell Douglas. It spent 20 years in commercial service, flew Freddie Laker. It was in the flight test program. And we purchased it in 1989. It went into service in 1994. This is the layout, and I'm just going to briefly take you through each one of these rooms so you can get a feel, since I assume most of you hadn't seen it. So we're a capacity, skill transfer-based organization. So behind the pilot's bulkhead, we have a 46-seat classroom. Behind that, we have an audio-visual room where we capture from the 19 cameras on the airplane, we capture all of the training events so that we can archive them, we can give them to the students. Beyond that, we have what we call the clinic. It's really a laser room, a pre and post-examining room, and a family waiting room. The yellow over the wing is the operating theater. It's a full state-of-the-art operating room. And then we have recovery in the back. This is a shot of the classroom. So we have 46 seats with medical personnel watching this surgery. This is the ITAV room, which being built in 1992 was huge with reel-to-reel beta. It's now shrunk considerably. But we capture all, and now with web-based capability, we can broadcast these live surgeries on the web. There's dual audio-video communication between the classroom and the operating theater. An operation that would take 10 or 15 minutes takes an hour and a half on the plane because we're trying to teach them these skills. This is the family waiting room and laser room. Here's the pre or post-op exam being done in that room. And here's what we call the substerile. We do a lot. We found out from the very beginning that you could train surgeons, but if you didn't have the whole team, if the nurses didn't know the proper care and treatment of instruments, if the anesthesiologist wasn't up on pediatric anesthesia, if the equipment was not repaired properly, then you were doomed for failure. So we teach all aspects. So we teach the surgeons, the biomeds how to repair equipment, the nurses on the proper treatment for patients and instruments, and anesthesiology. Then this is the recovery room. And when you're in the airplane, except for the windows that look like airplane windows. You wouldn't even know you were in an airplane. So now the new platform. When I was at FedEx, we started a program where we converted our DC-10s to MD-10s, the difference being that an MD-10 has a MD-11 cockpit on the main deck and a 777 VIA system underneath. All of our pilots are volunteer pilots from FedEx. All of our technical support, all of our parts come from FedEx. With the ever diminishing and soon to end DC-10 life at FedEx, it became apparent that we would not be able to operate. So we went on an exhaustive search, and it took me 2 years to get all these donations to put the new cockpit on the current Flying Eye Hospital when Fred Smith called and said, why don't you just take one of mine? So December last year, we got a donation of a FedEx N301FE Series 30 freighter. The Series 30 has 50% more range than the 1010, so it helps us tremendously. Since we do all our work abroad, we're at the mercy of fuel pricing wherever we go, so this doubles our range, so we eliminate tech stops. And the airplane, quite frankly, it speaks to the robust nature of the McDonnell Douglas product, but she's 40 years old and has spent an illustrious career, and it's about time to give her a rest. We're building the new hospital to be state-of-the-art in terms of medical and aviation. We're trying to do it within the budget that was predicted in 2008. And since it's a freighter, we came up with this concept where we're going to build the hospital in modules and take advantage of that 140-inch door. By doing that, we save a tremendous amount of money, $50 million in certification costs, because the equipment that goes into the modules doesn't have to be FAA certified. It's cargo. So we'll certify the modules. We'll have a solid barrier to separate the classroom from the hospital itself. But we can now buy light bulbs at Home Depot. So flooring, cabinetry, lighting, all of that equipment does not have to be certified, burn test, 9G. So it not only did it save us the money, it really made it so that this project was feasible. So here's a description. There's the FedEx airplane. It has a 140 by 140 by 96-inch door. So we're building these modules, 96 high by 125 and 217, so they deep, so they cover the whole floor. We have a special pallet and modular connection. They all are built for FAA certification. And the good news is if we want to change out a module sometime in the future, if we want to upgrade a module, if a module is damaged, if we want to add a second OR, we can do it without changing the whole topography. If something, God forbid, happened to the airplane, this whole modular unit could be transferred to another MD-10 or an MD-11. So it gave us a great deal of flexibility as well as lowering the cost. Here are some of our partners. FedEx donated the airplane, obviously. It's helped us with engines and tech support. Omni International, I call Rob Koretz because we have to put a classroom or a passenger section in the forward part of this freighter. I asked him if we could, if he could donate some interior parts. He had a DC-10 he had just retired. He said, why don't you take the whole airplane? So in Victorville, California, we have the FedEx Freighter next to the Omni passenger airplane, and we're in the process of moving the interior in the forward third. And as a footnote, I said to Rob, we'd like to recognize you in some meaningful way, some public display of your contribution. He said, doing the right thing is in our DNA. Being part of your team is thanks enough. We don't want any recognition. So don't tell him I said that. Honeywell is stepped up and said we have free spares for the life of the airplane, which is a tremendous savings for us. GE gives us tremendous engine support. The next three are historic FedEx vendors. So Satco is building the pallet. Anchor is adapting the cargo loading system to accept the new pallet. Alenia was a historic FedEx maintenance and modification provider and did the C-check in Venice, and the airplane just left a week ago for Victorville. SIE is the coordinating FedEx vendor who's doing the interior of the airplane, and the hospital is being built in modules in St. Johnsbury, Vermont by a firm called Mobile Medical, who actually build these units into semi-trucks. So it was a natural. We just gave them 2 or 3 semi-trucks hooked together. So there's 9 unique modules. They represent the rooms that I just described, the admin room, ITAV, clinic and patient care, operating theater, substerile, and recovery. In the lower compartment, we've actually built in workstation for biomedical engineering so that the local biomed engineers come to the plane and learn how to maintain, repair equipment. This is kind of a comparison of the 2 airplanes. That shows the 9 modules. There's 2 major changes, which speaks to the design philosophy of the first airplane. We've changed very little. The ITAV room has shrunk to about 1/3 the original size. That's due to technology and miniaturization. And in the current Flying Eye Hospital, the admin room is back in recovery, which wasn't ideal. So we moved it up front. And the last change is substerile, which is where we do instrument sterilization, was split on either side of the airplane. So the patients came in and out of the OR through this area. So now we've relocated it. It's the light orange, relocated it on the right-hand side of the airplane with an aisle that goes in and out of the operating theater without having to go through the substerile. Here's a shot of the containers. As you see, they have the 46 seats in the front, solid barrier, which has been relocated from the forward position as it is in the FedEx Freighter to accommodate the seats. And then the 9 modules. In the back, we have 2 labs and 2 changing rooms. This is another modification that speaks to our attention to cultural differences, because in Muslim countries, you have to have separate facilities for male and female. So we've actually had 2, a male and a female changing room and lavatory in the back. Here's a shot of the classroom in a super CAD drawing. The current airplane has an elevator to reach the lower hold. This didn't have an elevator, so we had to go with a ladder. And that concludes it. I'm going to now put on the Daniel Craig video that I hope you enjoy. Every time I see it, the hair on the back of my neck stands up, and then we'll segue into Dr. Black's. Any questions or comments? And Dr. Black and I will be around for the rest of the day at the reception tonight. If you want to stop by, say hello, or have a question, or we'll be free. So thank you very much.